The alert blared through the command center of Lunar Base Alpha. Commander Susan Miller looked up from her tactical display, her face illuminated by the flashing red lights. Something had entered the solar system, and it wasn't one of theirs. "Report," she ordered, her voice calm despite the chaos erupting around her. Lieutenant Frank Collins swiveled in his chair, fingers flying across his console. "Multiple objects detected beyond Neptune's orbit, Commander. They're big, really big, and they're moving fast, faster than anything we've ever recorded." Susan frowned. Humanity had expanded throughout the solar system over the past 50 years, establishing bases on the Moon, Mars, and several of Jupiter's moons. They had encountered strange phenomena before, but nothing like this. "Put it on the main screen," she said. The massive display flickered to life, showing a cluster of objects moving in perfect formation. They weren't asteroids or natural phenomena. The objects were clearly ships, with sleek metallic hulls that reflected the distant sunlight. Susan counted at least 20 of them, each larger than Earth's biggest battlecruiser. "Have they responded to our hails?" she asked. Communications Officer Diane Powell shook her head. "No response on any frequency, Commander. I've tried everything, from radio to quantum channels." Susan tapped her comm badge. "Get me Admiral Carter, now." Within minutes, Admiral John Carter's face appeared on her private screen. His expression was grim, the lines around his eyes deeper than usual. "You're seeing this too?" Susan asked. "The whole system is, Commander. We've got visual confirmation from Mars Colony and Jupiter Station. Whatever these things are, they're heading straight for Earth." "First contact," Susan whispered. Humanity. Had always wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now they had their answer. "I'm calling an emergency council," Admiral Carter said. "I want you there, Miller. Your ship leaves in 30 minutes. Susan nodded. "Yes, sir." The journey to Earth aboard her ship, the Swift Arrow, took only a few hours. The technology for fast interplanetary travel had been perfected decades ago, but humanity had never ventured beyond their solar system. They had been too busy rebuilding their world after the climate wars, too focused on colonizing the nearby planets to reach for the stars. The Emergency Defense Council was already in session when Susan arrived at the underwater facility beneath the Pacific Ocean. Representatives from all major Earth governments sat around a circular table, their faces showing varying degrees of fear and determination. Admiral Carter stood at the head of the table, next to Dr. Olivia Wright, Earth's leading expert in theoretical xenolinguistics. A holographic display in the center showed the alien fleet, now passing Jupiter's orbit. "They're moving at approximately 1/10 the speed of light," Dr. Wright was saying. "At this rate, they'll reach Earth in less than 48 hours. "Do we have any idea who they are or what they want?" asked the Chinese representative. Dr. Wright pushed her glasses up her nose. "We've been analyzing some fragmentary transmissions between their ships. The language is unlike anything we've encountered, but we've managed to decipher parts of it." She pressed a button and alien voices filled the room. The sounds were harsh and clicking, almost mechanical. "Our AI translators have been working non-stop," Dr. Wright continued. "From what we can gather, they call themselves the Vexari. They appear to be part of something called the Galactic Empire, and they don't seem friendly." Susan leaned forward. "How so?" Dr. Wright's expression darkened. "The transmissions contain repeated references to assimilation and primitive species. One phrase keeps appearing: standard conquest protocol for Class 3 civilizations." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Admiral Carter cleared his throat. "Intelligence Officer William Davis has something to add." A young man in a crisp uniform stood up. 27 days ago, we lost contact with our research outpost on Mars. We assumed it was a technical malfunction. We were wrong." He tapped his tablet, and new images appeared in the holographic display. The footage showed the Mars outpost, but something was wrong. Strange structures had been built around it, structures that pulsed with an eerie blue light. Alien figures moved among them, tall and insect-like. "They've been in our solar system for almost a month," Davis said, watching, studying, preparing. Susan felt a chill run down her spine. They already have a base on Mars and we didn't even know. Admiral Carter nodded grimly. Which means they know exactly what they're dealing with. They've assessed our technology, our defenses, our capabilities, and they're still coming, the Russian representative said. Which means they believe they can defeat us easily. The room erupted in arguments about the best course of action. Some wanted to attempt peaceful communication again. Others insisted on an immediate military response. A few even suggested surrender. Admiral Carter silenced them with a raised hand. We have 48 hours to prepare for an enemy we know nothing about, with technology far beyond our own. I need solutions, not arguments. Susan spoke up. Admiral, permission to lead a reconnaissance mission. If they've established a base on Mars, we need to know more about what we're facing. Carter nodded. Granted. Take a small team. Be discreet. And the rest of the fleet? Asked the American representative. We prepare for war, Carter said simply. Humanity's first interstellar war. 6 hours later, Susan stood on the bridge of the Swift Arrow as it approached Mars under stealth mode. Her team consisted of 5 of Earth's best. Pilot Jack Nelson, weapons specialist Kate Brown, engineer Sam Rogers, science officer Ben Taylor, and medic Laura Ward. Approaching the coordinates now, Commander, Jack said quietly, as if the aliens might hear them through the vacuum of space. The red planet loomed before them, but Susan's eyes were fixed on the alien base visible on its surface. The structure sprawled across what had once been the human research outpost, its architecture both beautiful and terrifying. What's the plan, Commander? Kate asked, her hand resting on her sidearm. Susan took a deep breath. The fate of humanity might depend on what they discovered here. We go in, we gather intelligence, and we get out. No engagement unless absolutely necessary. She looked at her team, seeing the determination in their eyes. They were afraid, only a fool wouldn't be, but they were ready. The Vexari think we're primitive, Susan said. They've underestimated us. That's their first mistake. As the swift arrow descended toward the Martian surface, Susan couldn't help but wonder if it would be the aliens' last mistake or humanity's. The red dust of Mars swirled around Susan and her team as they approached the alien base. They wore specialized stealth suits that masked their heat signatures and bent light around them, making them nearly invisible. Stay close, Susan whispered, into her comm. Remember, we observe only, no engagement. The Vexari base sprawled across the Martian landscape, a strange mix of crystalline towers and curved metallic structures. Alien ships, smaller than the fleet heading toward Earth but still imposing, sat on landing pads nearby. Ben Taylor, the science officer, scanned the structures with his equipment. Commander, I'm picking up unusual energy readings. Their power source. It's like nothing we've ever seen. Susan nodded. Record everything. Every bit of information could help us back on Earth. They moved carefully between shadow and shadow, approaching a low structure that seemed less guarded than the others. As they drew closer, they could see the Vexari for the first time up close. The alien stood nearly 8 feet tall with segmented bodies covered in a chitinous exoskeleton. Their limbs bent at odd angles, and their faces featured multiple pairs of eyes arranged in patterns around a central mouth filled with needle-like teeth. Some Vexari wore complex armor that seemed to pulse with energy, while others moved about in simpler garments. Are you seeing this? Laura Ward, the medic, whispered. Their physiology is incredible. Those exoskeletons must provide natural armor. Sam Rogers, the engineer, pointed to devices attached to the Vexari's heads. Look at those neural interfaces. I bet that's how they coordinate so perfectly. A group of Vexari emerged from the building ahead, escorting what appeared to be human prisoners, researchers from the Mars outpost. The humans looked thin and terrified, shuffling along with their heads bowed. Kate Brown, the weapons specialist, tensed beside Susan. Commander, we have to help them. Not now, Susan said firmly, though it pained her. We'd be captured or killed, and Earth would lose any advantage we might gain. We need to gather intelligence first. They watched as the prisoners were led into another building. Then, keeping to the shadows, the team made their way toward a structure that appeared to be a command center. judging by the number of Vexari entering and leaving. Sam discovered an access point in the rear of the building, a ventilation system of some kind. One by one, they slipped inside, finding themselves in a dimly lit corridor with walls that seemed to pulse with their own internal light. "This way," Susan whispered, following her scanner's readings toward a concentration of energy signatures. They came to a large chamber filled with holographic displays and strange technology. Dozens of Vexari moved about, tapping at control panels and communicating in their clicking language. In the center of the room, a three-dimensional map of Earth's solar system rotated slowly, with particular focus on Earth itself. Ben carefully recorded everything with his scanner, while Sam studied the alien technology. Laura observed the Vexari themselves, noting differences in their movements and appearances that suggested multiple subspecies or castes. Kate pointed to a Vexari who seemed to be giving orders. This one wore more elaborate armor and had additional neural interfaces attached to its head. "That must be their commander," she whispered. Susan nodded. The alien leader was gesturing at the Earth hologram, making sharp, aggressive movements. Other Vexari clicked in response, adjusting the displays to show Earth's defensive capabilities or what they knew of them. "They're planning the attack," Susan realized. "We need to get closer, hear what they're saying." Moving carefully around the perimeter of the room, they positioned themselves behind a bank of equipment near the central display. Dr. Wright's translation algorithms had been uploaded to their scanners, allowing them to understand fragments of the Vexari speech. "Primitive weapons. No significant threat," one Vexari was saying. "Standard conquest protocol. Minimal resistance expected," said another. The leader made a sound that might have been laughter. "The Class 3 assessment was generous. These humans have barely mastered space travel within their own system. Their technology is crude, their defenses negligible." "What about their numbers?" asked a smaller Vexari. "Irrelevant," the leader dismissed. "Their weapons cannot penetrate our shields. Our neural networks process combat data thousands of times faster than their primitive brains. Victory is certain." Susan exchanged glances with her team. The Vexari were dangerously overconfident, but they weren't wrong about the technological gap. Suddenly, a display lit up with an alert. A Vexari technician made urgent clicking sounds. "Commander, we've detected an anomaly in Security Grid 7. Possible intrusion." The leader turned sharply. "Impossible. The humans don't have stealth technology advanced enough to evade our sensors." Nevertheless, something triggered the proximity alerts, the technician insisted. The leader hissed in annoyance. "Dispatch security drones, sector-by-sector scan." Susan tapped her comm once, the signal to retreat. Slowly, carefully, they began to back away from their position. They had what they came for: confirmation of the Vexari's plans, and more importantly, insight into their psychology. The aliens were arrogant, dismissive of human capabilities, and utterly convinced of their superiority. They had almost reached the ventilation shaft when a security drone rounded the corner, a floating sphere with multiple sensor arrays protruding from its surface. It paused, as if confused by the stealth technology, then emitted a shrill alarm. "Run," Susan ordered, abandoning stealth for speed. They sprinted through the corridors as alarms blared throughout the base. Vexari security forces converged from multiple directions, firing weapons that shot pulses of energy. Kate turned and fired her sidearm, hitting a drone and sending it crashing to the ground. "Keep moving." They reached the ventilation shaft and scrambled through, emerging outside the command center. But more Vexari were converging on their position, and the landing pads where their ship waited seemed impossibly far away. "We're not going to make it on foot," Jack Nelson, the pilot, said grimly. Susan looked around desperately, then pointed to a small Vexari transport vessel sitting on a nearby pad. "There! Sam, can you fly that thing?" The engineer grinned. "I can try." They sprinted for the alien craft, dodging energy blasts. Sam reached it first, quickly studying the controls while the others provided covering fire. "I think I've got it," he said after a moment, pressing what appeared to be an activation sequence. The craft hummed to life, its engines glowing with an eerie blue light. The team piled in as Vexari forces closed in from all sides. "Hang on," Sam called as he manipulated the unfamiliar controls. The craft lurched upward, wobbling dangerously before stabilizing and shooting forward. Behind them, the Vexari base grew smaller as they raced toward their hidden ship. Susan looked at the data they'd collected, a grim smile forming on her face. "The Vexari are powerful," she said, "but they've made one critical mistake." "What's that?" Laura asked. "They think they know exactly what they're fighting," Susan replied. "They've classified us, categorized us, and dismissed us, but they've never actually fought humans before." As their stolen craft neared the location of the swift arrow, Susan knew that the coming battle would be like nothing the Vexari, or humanity, had ever experienced before. The swift arrow raced back to Earth, carrying information that might save humanity. Susan and her team worked through the journey, analyzing the data they had gathered about the Vexari. "Look at this," Ben said, pointing to his screen. "Their neural interfaces connect all Vexari in a battlefield network. They share information instantly, coordinate perfectly." Sam nodded. "That's why they move in such perfect formation. It's like they're all parts of one mind during combat." "But that could be a weakness," Susan said thoughtfully. "Systems can be jammed, networks can be hacked." Kate was studying the recordings of Vexari physiology. "Their exoskeletons are tough, but they have joints and sensory organs that look vulnerable. And did you notice how they all reacted when that alarm went off? They seemed almost pained by the sound." "Sensitive hearing," Laura confirmed. "And those multiple eyes suggest they might be vulnerable to bright flashes or certain light frequencies." The swift arrow docked at Earth Defense Headquarters, where Admiral Carter was waiting. Susan handed him their findings. "We don't have much time," she said. "The main fleet will reach Earth within 24 hours. "Then we'd better get to work," Carter replied. "The full defense fleet is assembled. Captain George Robinson is leading our main battle group." In the war room, the Earth's military leaders gathered around a holographic display showing the approaching Vexari fleet. Captain Robinson stood tall, his weathered face serious as he studied the enemy positions. "They're coming in a standard attack formation," he noted. "Very organized, very predictable. They're not expecting us to put up much of a fight. And we can use that against them," Susan said. She explained what they had learned about the Vexari, their reliance on neural networks, their apparent sensitivity to certain sounds and lights, their rigid thinking and overconfidence. Dr. Allen Foster, Earth's leading weapons engineer, listened intently. "So their neural interfaces operate on specific electromagnetic frequencies." "Interesting. Very interesting." "Can you do something with that?" Admiral Carter asked. Foster's eyes lit up. "Maybe. We can't match their firepower, but if we could disrupt their neural networks." "How quickly can you develop something?" Carter pressed. "Give me 6 hours," Foster replied, already heading for his lab. Carter turned to the assembled leaders. "We need to buy time. Captain Robinson, your battle group will engage the Vexari fleet when they reach lunar orbit. Your mission is not to win, but to confuse and delay." Robinson nodded grimly. "Understood, sir." Susan spoke up. "Admiral, I'd like to lead a special operation. If Dr. Foster can develop a device to disrupt their neural networks, we'll need to get it close to their command ships." "Approved," Carter said without hesitation. "Choose your team." As the meeting broke up, General Patricia Summers stepped forward. Her gray hair was cut short, and her eyes reflected decades of military experience. "We're outgunned and outmanned," she said bluntly. "But humans have a long history of winning against superior forces. We don't play by the rules, we adapt, we improvise." She turned to Susan. "Commander Miller, I want civilian hackers working with your team. If these aliens rely on networked systems, let's show them what human hackers can do to networks." Susan smiled. "I know just the person." 6 hours later, Susan stood in Dr. Foster's lab with her team. Foster held up a small device that pulsed with a soft blue light. This emitter produces an electromagnetic pulse tuned specifically to the frequency range used by Vexari neural interfaces, he explained. "It won't damage their technology permanently, but it will create noise in their network, like static on an old radio. The closer you get to their ships, the more effective it will be. Will it affect humans? Susan asked. Foster shook his head. Our brains don't process information the same way. We might feel a slight tingling sensation, but nothing serious. Kate examined the device. How many do you have? We've manufactured 50, Foster replied. Not enough to use against their entire fleet, but enough for a targeted strike against their command structure. Meanwhile, Captain Robinson stood on the bridge of the EDF Defiant as it led Earth's battle group toward the approaching Vexari fleet. His ships were arranged in a standard defensive formation, exactly what the Vexari would expect. All ships, prepare to engage, he ordered. Then, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes, he added, and remember the plan. Let's show these aliens something they've never seen before. The Vexari fleet emerged from behind the moon, their massive ships dwarfing Earth's vessels. Energy readings spiked as they charged their weapons. They're targeting us, Captain, his tactical officer reported. Robinson nodded. Wait for it. Wait. Now. Execute. Pattern chaos. Instantly, Earth's neat formation dissolved. Ships scattered in seemingly random directions, engines flaring as they executed wild, unpredictable maneuvers. The Vexari fired and missed. Their carefully calculated targeting solutions were useless against ships that refused to follow predictable paths. Aboard the Vexari command ship, Admiral Zikathara clicked his mandibles in irritation. What are they doing? This is not standard combat doctrine. His tactical officer's head tendrils twitched nervously. They're not following any known pattern, Admiral. Our targeting systems cannot predict their movements. Impossible, Zikathara snapped. They are a Class 3 civilization. Their tactics should be primitive and straightforward. Back on Earth, Susan and her team boarded their ship along with civilian hacker Ryan Cooper, a young man with bright eyes and fingers that seemed to fly over keyboard interfaces. The Vexari ships are networked not just for neural interfaces but for all systems, Ryan explained excitedly. Life support, weapons, navigation, everything. If we can access their network, we can create chaos, Susan finished. Their ship launched, joining the battle already raging in space. Captain Robinson's unorthodox tactics had confused the Vexari, but the aliens were adapting. Their superior firepower was beginning to tell. We need to move fast, Susan told her pilot. Take us in close to their flagship. As they approached, weaving through energy beams and debris, Ryan worked feverishly at his console. I'm detecting their network signals. Strong encryption, but there are patterns, weaknesses. Susan watched the battle unfold on her tactical display. Earthships were being hit, some critically damaged, but they were also scoring hits against the Vexari, something the aliens clearly hadn't expected. We're in position, the pilot announced as they slipped under the massive hull of the Vexari flagship. Susan activated the comm. All teams, deploy Foster devices now. Across the battlefield, small Earth vessels moved into position near key Vexari ships. The devices were activated simultaneously. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, one by one, Vexari ships began to drift out of formation. Some fired at random, missing their targets by wide margins. Others stopped firing altogether. On the Vexari flagship, Admiral Zekathara clutched his head as pain lanced through his neural interface. The battle data, normally so clear and precise, dissolved into meaningless noise. Around him, his crew writhed, in similar discomfort. What is happening? He demanded, but no one could answer. The perfect coordination that made the Vexari so formidable had been shattered, and as the aliens struggled to make sense of their suddenly chaotic world, Susan gave the order that would forever change the course of the battle. Now, Ryan. The hacker pressed a final key. Virus deployed. The virus spread through the Vexari network like wildfire. Ryan had designed it specifically to target their command systems, and it worked better than anyone had hoped. Ship after ship lost control of weapons, life support, and navigation systems. The perfect formation of the Vexari fleet dissolved into chaos. Admiral Zakathara slammed his clawed fist against his command chair. The pain in his head was unbearable. The neural interface that had always been his greatest strength now a source of agony. Around him, his crew struggled with similar pain. "Disconnect from the network," he ordered, his voice strained. "All ships, sever neural connections." But his orders couldn't get through. The communication systems were compromised, broadcasting conflicting commands across the fleet. Some Vexari captains, desperate to escape the electronic assault, manually disconnected their ships from the network. Others, unable to function without the neural link they had relied on for so long, drifted aimlessly. On the bridge of the EDF Defiant, Captain Robinson watched in amazement as the mighty Vexari fleet fell into disarray. He had expected their plan to cause some confusion, but nothing like this. "All ships, concentrate fire on their flagship," he ordered. "Target propulsion systems, Earth's." Ships moved in perfect coordination. Not because they shared a neural network, but because they had trained together, learned to trust each other, and could adapt to changing circumstances. The Vexari, cut off from their network and unused to making independent decisions, were slow to respond. Susan watched from her ship as the Earth fleet pressed its advantage. "It's working," she said, her voice filled with cautious hope. "We need to push harder. Brian, can you access their weapon systems?" The hacker's fingers danced across his keyboard. "Working on it. Their security is adapting, but so am I." On the Vexari flagship, Admiral Zakathara tore the neural interface from his head, ignoring the pain as connections were severed. Around him, other high-ranking officers did the same. "This is impossible," his second-in-command gasped. "How can primitives do this to us? We've conquered hundreds of worlds." "They're not fighting like any species we've encountered," Zakathara growled. "No formations, no standard tactics, and these attacks on our neural network. This was not in our intelligence reports." A junior officer approached, trembling slightly. "Admiral, we've lost contact with 27 ships. 15 more report. Critical system failures and—" He hesitated. "Speak," Zakathara demanded. "Our weapon systems are firing on their own. 3 of our ships have been hit by friendly fire." Zakathara's multiple eyes widened in shock. In the 300 cycles of his military career, he had never experienced anything like this. The Vexari Empire had conquered countless civilizations, most more advanced than humans, yet none had managed to turn the Empire's strengths against it so effectively. Susan's ship maneuvered close to one of the larger Vexari vessels. "Deploy boarding teams," she ordered. "We need to gather as much intelligence as we can while their systems are compromised." Teams of Earth soldiers, equipped with Foster's disruptor devices, launched toward the Vexari ships. They encountered little resistance. The Vexari soldiers, confused and in pain from their malfunctioning neural interfaces, were easily subdued. Lieutenant Lisa Zhao led one of these teams onto a Vexari science vessel. They moved swiftly through the alien corridors, stunning the disoriented Vexari they encountered. "The command center should be ahead," Lisa told her team. "Remember, we need their navigation data and any information about the wider empire." They burst into the ship's command center to find the Vexari officers frantically trying to regain control of their vessel. Lisa activated her disruptor device, and the aliens collapsed in pain, clutching their heads. "Secure the room," she ordered. "Download everything from their main computer." Meanwhile, Captain Robinson's fleet had surrounded the Vexari flagship. The massive alien vessel fired sporadically, but its shots went wide, missing the Earth ships entirely. "Their targeting systems are completely compromised," Robinson's tactical officer reported. Robinson nodded. "Press the advantage. Target their engines and weapons arrays." Earth ships fired in concert, their weapons striking precise points on the Vexari flagship. Explosions bloomed along its hull as critical systems were hit. Aboard the flagship, Admiral Zakathara watched in horror as his ship's damage reports flooded in. Without the neural network, his crew was slow, inefficient, unable to coordinate their responses. "This can't be happening," his second-in-command whispered. "They're just humans. Primitives." Zakathara turned on him, rage in all 4 of his eyes. Clearly, our assessment was wrong. We underestimated them. A mistake I will not repeat. He turned to his navigation officer. Prepare to withdraw. We must regroup and reassess. Admiral, protested his weapons officer. Retreat? Before humans? The Emperor will have our heads. He will have our entire species if we lose this fleet due to pride. Zakathara snapped back. We are fighting an enemy we do not understand, using tactics we have never encountered. The strategic choice is clear. He activated the emergency communication system, bypassing the compromised network. All ships, this is Admiral Zakathara. Disengage and withdraw immediately. Return to Rally Point Sigma. This is not a defeat. It is a strategic reassessment. Across the battlefield, Vexari ships began to break away from the fight. Some moved in coordination, others seemed to drift away randomly, their navigation systems still compromised by Ryan's virus. Susan watched from her ship, barely able to believe what she was seeing. They're retreating, she said softly. We actually did it. Ryan looked up from his console, his face pale with exhaustion but his eyes bright with triumph. Their central command just issued a full withdrawal order. They're running. But the retreat was not orderly. Vexari ships, some still under the influence of Foster's disruptors and Ryan's virus, collided with each other. Others fired randomly as weapon systems misfired, hitting their own vessels. The once mighty fleet was in complete disarray. Admiral Carter's voice came over the comm. All ships, hold position, let them go. Sir? Susan questioned. Shouldn't we pursue? Not yet, Commander, Carter replied. We've won this battle, but we need time to prepare for what comes next. The Vexari will be back, and next time, they'll be ready for our tricks. As the alien ships disappeared into the darkness of space, Susan turned to her team. They were exhausted but alive, and humanity had survived its first encounter with the Galactic Empire. What now? Jack asked, voicing the question on everyone's mind. Susan looked out at the stars, where the last of the Vexari ships were vanishing from sight. Now we learn everything we can from the ships we've captured. We prepare, and we make sure that when they come back, we're ready. Across the solar system, humans watched in amazement as news of the victory spread. Against all odds, humanity had faced a technologically superior enemy and won. Not through superior firepower or advanced technology, but through adaptability, creativity, and the uniquely human ability to think outside established patterns. But as Susan had said, this was only the first battle. The war was just beginning. 6 months after the battle, Earth had changed. Ships salvaged from the Vexari fleet had provided humanity with technology they might have taken decades to develop on their own. The captured alien vessels were being studied, reverse-engineered, and integrated into Earth's growing defense fleet. Susan stood on the observation deck of the new Earth Defense Station, watching as workers in spacesuits attached Vexari-inspired shield generators to the outer hull. The station hung in orbit above Earth, the first of 12 planned to create a defensive network around the planet. Admiral Carter joined her, his face more lined than before but his eyes still sharp. Impressive, isn't it? 6 months ago we could barely defend our own planet. Now we're preparing to take the fight to them. Do you think they'll come back? Susan asked, though she already knew the answer. Carter nodded grimly. Without question. We humiliated them, and from what we've learned from the captured ships' databases, the Vexari Empire doesn't forgive or forget. They'll return with a larger force, better prepared for our tactics. Then we'd better be ready, Susan replied. In a laboratory beneath the Pacific Ocean, Dr. Foster worked with a team of scientists studying Vexari technology. The alien devices were spread across tables, partially disassembled as human engineers tried to unlock their secrets. Their power systems are at least 50 years ahead of ours, Foster explained to General Summers as she toured the facility. But we're making progress. The neural interfaces are particularly interesting. He held up a small device, similar to the Vexari design but modified for human use. We can't use them the way the Vexari do. Our brains aren't compatible. but we've adapted them to enhance reaction times and coordinate tactical data between ships. Summers nodded approvingly. How soon can we deploy them? We're already testing prototypes with Special Forces teams, Foster replied. Lieutenant Zhao's squad is training with them now. In a training facility on the moon, Lisa Zhao led her team through combat exercises. Each soldier wore a modified version of the Vexari neural enhancer, allowing them to share tactical information without speaking. Unlike the Vexari system, the human version didn't link minds directly. It only shared specific combat data, protecting the users from the vulnerabilities that had doomed the aliens. Faster, Lisa urged, as her team moved through the simulated Vexari ship. Remember, they'll be expecting our tactics now. We need to evolve, adapt. Her second-in-command, Paul Wilson, nodded. They'll have countermeasures for the disruptors and the virus. Exactly, Lisa said. Which is why we're developing new ones. The Vexari think in straight lines. We need to think around corners. In orbit around Mars, Captain Robinson supervised the construction of an early warning network. Using modified Vexari sensors, the system would detect approaching ships long before they reached Earth, giving humanity precious time to prepare. The outer perimeter is operational, his engineering officer reported. We've got detection capabilities, extending all the way to Jupiter's orbit now. Robinson nodded with satisfaction. Good. What about the automated defense platforms? The first 20 are online. They're programmed to respond to any Vexari signature with random evasive patterns, should confuse their targeting systems just like our ships did. In a secure communications center, Ryan Cooper worked with a team of the world's best hackers, studying the Vexari computer language they had captured during the battle. Their code is elegant but predictable, Ryan explained to Susan during her inspection tour. They build perfect systems with perfect defenses against expected attacks, but they don't account for the unexpected. He showed her a simulation on his screen, where a human virus overwhelmed Vexari defenses. We're developing new cyber weapons that will target their communication systems first, then life support. Next time, they won't just retreat, they'll surrender. Susan nodded, but her expression remained serious. Don't underestimate them, Ryan. They'll have learned from their defeat. They won't make the same mistakes twice. Neither will we, Ryan promised. In what had once been the UN General Assembly, now converted into Earth's unified defense headquarters, representatives from all nations gathered to discuss the next phase of preparations. Admiral Carter stood at the podium, addressing the assembled leaders. The Vexari database has given us invaluable information, he said. We now know that the Empire controls over 300 worlds across this arm of the galaxy. They've been expanding for millennia, conquering species more advanced than our own. He pressed a button and a holographic map appeared showing the Vexari Empire's territory and Earth's position at its edge. But we've also learned something else, something that gives us hope. The map zoomed in on various worlds marked in different colors. These are worlds that the Vexari have conquered but not fully assimilated. Species who continue to resist, in ways large and small. Potential allies. A murmur ran through the assembly. The idea that humanity wasn't alone in its fight against the Empire changed everything. We've begun work on a long-range communication device based on Vexari technology, Carter continued. Our goal is to contact these other species, to form an alliance against our common enemy. Dr. Wright stepped forward, taking over the presentation. We've already begun translating the major languages used in the Empire. When we make contact, we'll be able to communicate. In a shipyard orbiting the moon, Susan walked through the corridors of Earth's newest vessel. Larger than any ship humans had built before, it incorporated the best of human ingenuity and Vexari technology. Its name was painted proudly on the hull, EDF Defiance. She'll be ready for her maiden voyage next week, the shipyard director told Susan as they toured the bridge. The first ship designed specifically to operate in deep space beyond our solar system. Susan ran her hand over what would be the captain's chair. And her mission? Exploration and diplomacy, the director replied. Admiral Carter wants to send her to the nearest potentially friendly world, to make first contact, not with the Vexari, but with those who might stand with us against them. Susan nodded, feeling the weight of what was to come. The battle they had won was just the beginning. The Vexari would return, and when they did, they would come with a force designed to crush human resistance, but they would find a humanity transformed, no longer confined to one solar system, no longer limited by their own technology. A humanity that had taken its first steps into the galactic community, not as conquerors, but as liberators. As she looked out the viewport at Earth, hanging in the blackness of space, Susan thought about how strange it was. The Vexari had come to conquer a primitive species confined to one small corner of the galaxy. Instead, they had awakened a force that might one day challenge their empire. The humans were coming, and they were bringing something the galaxy had not seen in a long time. Hope.